I remember the letter that killed our summers. Camp Grinlow was closing, the sign torn down, the cabins left to rot. For years, it was where my childhood lived. The bonfires, the whispered dares, the stupid little games we thought made us brave. Max, Annie, and I had been inseparable after that first night sneaking out. We grew up, drifted apart, then found our way back. And when Max sent us that drone footage of the camp, the fire pit still standing in the ruins, the trail cutting through the trees like an old scar, we knew we had to go back, one last time. When we arrived, the place was a corpse. The cabins sagged under years of silence. The sign was just splinters. But when the three of us sat down at the fire pit, it almost felt alive again. We laughed. We roasted marshmallows. For a few minutes, it was like nothing had changed. And then the whistle came. A slow, deliberate tune drifting from the trees. Familiar. Wrong. None of us had planned it. None of us admitted to it. But we stepped into the clearing anyway, grinning like children, ready to play the game we never should have touched again. The last time I'd seen Camp Grinlow, I was 13, pressed into a bunk with 8 other kids who snored, whispered, and kept secrets in the dark. Back then, the woods felt endless, the cabins felt solid, and the counselors felt immortal. I thought the place would be waiting for me forever. But when Annie's car headlights cut across the gravel loop, I saw what was left. Weeds strangling the fence posts, the sign that once shouted Grinlow, now dangling like a broken jaw. She leaned against her car, arms folded, trying to look braver than she felt. Her lips pressed tight, her eyes darting toward the trees every time the wind shifted. "You're late," she said when I pulled in beside her. "You're early," I answered, though the joke fell flat in the cold air. We didn't go near the cabins until Max arrived, pulling up crooked, already chewing gum, already grinning like nothing could scare him. He joked about seeing bears, about getting lost, about how the camp looked smaller now that we'd grown. But I saw the way his shoulders hunched, the way his jokes landed softer than they used to. We walked the old trails together, letting the undergrowth brush our legs, stepping over roots that hadn't been there when we were kids. The cabins were skeletons, windows punched out, paint stripped raw, doors missing. The mess hall gaped wide and hollow, a rib cage of beams. It felt wrong, not just abandoned, but watched. As if the camp itself remembered us, remembered the games we had played, and was waiting to see if we would try again. At the fire pit, the stones were still there, scorched black. The benches sagged into the dirt, half swallowed by weeds, but familiar enough that when we sat down, we almost forgot the years between. Max tore open a bag of marshmallows, Annie struck a match, and for a moment, the crackle of fire drowned the silence of the woods. We laughed, awkward at first, then real. Memories slipped back. The counselors, the jokes, the games. Annie reminded us of statues and songs, the one where you crept forward while someone hummed and froze when the humming stopped. Max argued he'd never cheated, though both of us knew better. The more we talked, the closer it felt to that last summer. We were kids again, just for an hour, clinging to something that no longer belonged to us. And then, just as the fire sank low and the woods pressed tighter around us, the first whistle came. The first whistle was faint enough to mistake for the wind, but the second cut through the trees, carrying the exact tune we'd just been talking about. Statues and songs. A child's game. Annie froze. "Okay, I know you hid your speaker." Max shook his head. "Not me." I lifted my phone to prove the battery was nearly dead. None of us were lying. The sound had come from the clearing, steady, deliberate, impossible. We should have packed up. We should have left. Instead, Max grinned like it was a dare. "Come on, one more round, for old time's sake." Annie rolled her eyes, but she stood. I followed because I didn't want to be the one left behind. The clearing looked the same as it always had, a wide circle funneled into a straight path, half-buried stones marking the line. The rules came back without anyone saying them. Move with the tune, freeze when it stops, reach the host, touch them. That's how you won. The whistle began again, and we moved. Max shoved past me. Annie surged ahead, braid swinging. We laughed, ridiculous in the dark, until the sound cut out. Annie stumbled forward at that exact instant. The silence snapped around us like a noose. Her body seized, spine jerking upright, and we heard the pop before we saw her collapse. Her arms twisted outward, her legs folding wrong, and then she was still. Max's grin drained into panic. "I didn't push her that hard." His voice cracked like he was begging me to believe it. But the truth lay twisted in the dirt. Annie's eyes frozen wide, her breath gone. And then, before we could scream, before we could even kneel beside her, the whistle started again. Max dropped to his knees beside Annie, but couldn't bring himself to touch her. His hands hovered inches from her hair, shaking. She can't be. I forced myself forward, pressing 2 fingers to her neck. No pulse. Skin cooling fast in the night air. Saying the words felt like giving them power, but they tumbled out anyway. "She's dead." Max stumbled backward, eyes wide, head shaking too fast. No, it wasn't me." His voice pitched higher with every word. The whistle cut the night again, long and steady, as if mocking us. We both froze. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, but my legs locked. Max's chest heaved like he'd been punched. Only when the tune faded did we gasp in air. Then, against every instinct, he took a step toward the fire pit. "I'm done. I'm not doing this." The moment his shoe crossed the ring of half-buried stones, his body snapped upright. His spine bowed like a puppet string yanked from above. His scream tore once through the clearing before a dull crack silenced him. He collapsed face down, limbs crooked, neck bent at an angle no body should take. I wanted to believe he had killed Annie by accident, that it was human, explainable. But watching him crumple, I understood. The game itself was killing us. The whistle wasn't an echo from memory, it was the host, still waiting for players. And I was the only one left. The next round started with a note so sharp it rattled my teeth. My body trembled, but I stayed in place. The rules were all I had. If I broke them, I would end like Annie and Max. The whistle faded. I froze. When it returned, I forced my legs forward, shaky step after shaky step. The figure appeared in the distance, tall, rigid, with arms hanging close to its sides. The fire behind me threw just enough glow to outline the thing. With every exhale, air hissed through its slits in its chest, turning breath into the tune. That was the whistle. That was the host. I limped forward, careful, my ankle screaming from where it had rolled on a root. Each pause forced weight onto it until sparks of pain burst behind my eyes. I clenched my teeth, trying not to groan. If I moved wrong, if I made a sound when the whistle cut, I'd die. Memories tangled with every step. Annie laughing as marshmallows browned perfectly. Max shoving too hard but never meaning harm. Now they laid broken behind me, and I was inching toward the thing that had claimed them. The whistle cut off. I froze mid-step, balance wavering, heel hovering. My calves screamed. Seconds dragged long as hours. Sweat ran into my eyes. Finally, the tune returned, and I settled my foot without falling. I was close enough now to smell it, a metallic tang like rust mixed with moss. The figure didn't sway or blink. It waited. Each column of breath through its ribs was steady, mechanical. I tried not to look at its hands, but I couldn't stop. Fingers too long, curled inward, stiff, as if waiting to close around something. Around me. The rounds stretched on, cruel in their rhythm. My ankle faltered again and again, but I caught myself each time, choking back sound. I thought about my parents, about Annie's mother, about Max's stupid jokes, about how no one would find us here for days. Our cars would sit at the loop, gathering dust, while our bodies rotted in the clearing. Every whistle was another chance to fail, another chance to break. But I kept moving, drawn toward the thing, because there was no other choice. When I finally reached it, the clearing was silent. My palm met rough bark, a tree, nothing more. For a moment, I thought that I had won, that the nightmare would collapse, and I would wake on the old bunks, sun on my face, Annie correcting counselor names, Max laughing too loud. But when I turned back, the fire still smoldered low. Their bodies were still there, broken. And I realized the cruelest truth of the game. Winning didn't bring anyone back. It only left you alive long enough to remember. I kept my hand against the trunk, refusing to look away. If I blinked, if I faltered, I feared the whistle would return and tear me apart like the others. My ankle pulsed with heat. My breath burned shallow. Then I realized the tree was breathing. At first, it was subtle, the bark rising just barely beneath my palm, like a chest pulling air. Then the sound followed, a hiss dragging through hollow spaces. The whistle flared again, but this time it didn't drift from the distance. It came from inches in front of me, vibrating through the wood beneath my skin. I staggered back. The bark split open. Light seeped from the cracks, pale and sickly, outlining ribs that should not have belonged to a tree. The figure stepped forward, separating itself from the trunk, like the camp itself had grown it. Its skin was the same rough texture, but stretched too thin, anchored to bones carved with holes that sang every time it breathed. The tune of our childhood game poured from its chest, steady, relentless. The clearing bent with it. Every flicker of firelight leaned toward the sound. My pulse tried to match the rhythm, pounding against my ribs, daring me to move at the wrong time. It raised its hands, fingers long as branches, curling toward me. Its head tilted, faceless except for slits carved deep where a mouth might have been. Each exhale dragged another note, forcing me to obey the game I wished I'd never remembered. I wanted to run. I wanted to collapse beside Max and Annie and let the nightmare end. But something older than fear held me still. The rules were chains around my spine. If I broke them, I would die. If I kept playing, I might live. The whistle cut. I froze, lungs locked. The creature leaned close, slits glowing, breath spilling across my face like damp wind. For a heartbeat, I thought it would end me there, but the sound returned, sharper than ever, and my body jerked forward in half a step, as if pulled by invisible strings. I realized then I wasn't playing anymore. The game was playing me. When the whistle finally stopped, the silence was worse than the sound. My body sagged, every nerve still braced for the next note.
I dared to breathe, shallow and careful, and when nothing happened, I looked down. The creature was gone. No trace of bark skin or hollow ribs. Only the tree stood before me, rough and solid, as though it had never moved. Behind me, the fire sputtered low, painting the clearing in dull orange. Max lay crumpled at the edge of the stones, Annie twisted in the dirt. Their faces caught the light in ways that made them look almost alive, almost ready to blink, to laugh, to scold me for taking it too far. But they didn't move. I tried to limp toward them, ankle throbbing, but my legs folded before I reached the circle. I collapsed on the grass, chest heaving. Every emotion I'd swallowed to survive came flooding out at once. Grief, terror, guilt. The sobs tore through me until I was choking on them. I wanted to scream for help, but the woods would never answer. The game had ended. I was alive, and that was the prize. But in the dark, with their bodies cooling only feet away, it felt less like survival and more like punishment. You think you can walk away from the sound. You think you can close your eyes, cover your ears, pretend the rules don't matter. But once the whistle calls, it remembers you. We were there when you first played, in fields and camps long forgotten. We watched as laughter turned to silence, as games turned to graves. And we will be there again, waiting in the dark, patient as rot, certain as breath. So when you hear the tune, slow, steady, impossible on the wind, you will know the game has begun, and we are always listening. The end.